We didn't come here to fight monsters, says the guy that let his girlfriend get kidnapped multiple times by said monster that they easily could have avoided if they just stayed out of the beautiful paradise that was the Black Lagoon. I'm John Rentham with the retro view of Creature from the Black Lagoon, one of my favorite monster movies of all time, hell, one of my favorite sci-fi horror movies of all time, whatever you want to label it as. Seriously, I fucking love this. It's just goddamn great. The Gill man, this guy, by the way, just in case you're unfamiliar, if you've been living under a rock or living under the rock like some women want to be. Anyway, let's move on from that and talk about this, and it's the collection of the 3 Creature from the Black Lagoon movies. The Creature from the Black Lagoon, obviously it would be weird if the most iconic of the 3 movies was not included. It would be a very odd collection. And Revenge of the Creature, which was churned out really, really quickly a year afterwards. And then The Creature Walks Among Us, which was also churned out a year after the second one. Not a year after the first one. It would be weird if there were 2 sequels released within the same year of each other. But Universal International Pictures sure love to basically just squeeze as much blood out of any turnip that they had. They so many goddamn monster collections, and I would argue that Creature from the Black Lagoon, even Revenge of the Creature, even though it did reuse some of the footage, if you watch them back to back, you'll fucking understand. I really enjoy these movies because the Gill man, it's so interesting just to hear more about, like, you don't really need to understand the lore. He's a creature that is basically, like, you know, not a part of this world. He's not part of this. He's part of a prehistoric era. And that makes sense because considering what he does in this movie, which I am going to spoil because A, fuck you, and also the movie is approaching 70 years on this goddamn planet. So if you haven't seen it, sorry, that's kind of the point of retro reviews. I'm going to talk about that. So it is directed by Jack Arnold, one of my favorite directors of all time. Top 10 director. He did this. He did do Revenge of the Creature. He did The Incredible Shrinking Man. He did another sci-fi movie that I fucking love. It Came from Outer Space that I did retro review a couple years ago. It was either 2 or 3 years ago. Check that out. And this is really goddamn great. It also stars Richard Carlson, who was in both movies. It would be strange if I brought that up and mentioned him if he wasn't somehow connected. And it really fascinating stuff to hear about Jack Arnold. He understood how to do subtlety in, you know, sci-fi monster movies. He told, yes, it's the typical stuff of, okay, you have this character, you have this main hero, you know, because you need a hero at the end of the night. They've got to be strong, they've got to be tough, and they've got to be strong enough to fight. I think that's how the lyrics go for a hero. But anyway, Jack Arnold understood how to do that. You get a hero, you get a heroine, not the drug, even though I'm sure in the 50s that happened. You get a guy that kind of goes mad with power, and you get a monster. And you have some sci-fi stuff, and you eventually reveal the monster. You have him reveal himself, or herself, or itself, whatever. We don't judge here. And you just tell a good story. He did Earth, well, did he do Earth versus a Spider? I know Tarantula, he did that. There was Tarantula, there was them. A whole bunch of, I mean, I know he didn't do them. He did a bunch of stuff. Like, he did later, his releases got a little but looking at his catalog, he has a lot of movies that stand the test of time. Like, again, I'm going to bring up Creature from the Black Lagoon. So, it's written by Harry Essex. Man, I hate when my Essex is hairy. I really should go and, you know, manscape that shit. Arthur A. Ross, and story by Maurice Zim. I think it was the MST3K set that actually had a short documentary on this and on Jack Arnold. And just, it wasn't the deepest, but for like 25 minutes or so, pretty damn good. There were film historians, people talking about that, and Jack Arnold obviously understood film. And Dr. David Reed was Richard Carlson from It Came from Outer Space, and he's been in a bunch of other stuff. Kay, played by Julie Adams, who I'm just going to say right fucking now, one, stunning, fucking goddamn stunning at this point. She was 27, 28 when this came out. And she looked great. She actually lived to be 92. She died in February of 2019. She lived to be pretty goddamn old. A life well lived. But she plays a heroine here. There's Dr. Mark Richard Denning. Denning. Oh, hi, Denning. He is the one, obviously. Whenever you have 2 doctors, doctor, give me the news. We've got a guy that's going, you know, nuts for you. And also we have another doctor that's going mad with power. And Captain Lucas, who was Nestor Paiva, I don't understand how to pronounce his name. He was in Revenge of the Creature. He's the ship captain. He was also in The Mole People. He was in Was he? He was in Tarantula. He was in Tarantula. He was the sheriff, I believe, because it was a New Mexico town or Texas town. I need to get Tarantula on Blu-ray. But there's Dr. Carl Maya, and Antonio Moreno, not Rita Moreno. Maybe he's related to her. I don't really know. Music supervision by Joseph Gershenson, and he actually ended up directing The Mole People. Yeah, they brought a music supervisor in to load that with stock footage and said, "Okay, Joseph, direct this." And there's another backstory about The Mole People that's really fascinating. And produced by William Allen and Alland, and actually Arnold Gershenson, sorry, and Alland actually were tied together. They have a lot of like interwoven stuff as far as movies that they did, because Universal understood teams. They would also have people under contract. That's where Clint Eastwood actually was in Revenge of the Creature for a little bit, and he would end up doing, some. He would end up like, being in various. I think he was in Tarantula, and then he would get out and he would do Rawhide, and he would end up, becoming one of the biggest actors and directors as well of, God, many fucking years. Yeah, Revenge of the Creature. He was the guy, by the way, in case you've seen Revenge of the Creature and can't recall Clint Eastwood, he was the lab tech that had the rat in his pocket that did bad comedy. That was his first speaking role. And actually the MST version's funny, because it was their debut episode on Sci-Fi. He said, "Oh, this guy sucks. This is his first and last movie." But anyway, from Universal Pictures, I would argue, next to The Host, I would say this is better than The Host. The Host, not the 2013 Stephenie Meyer fapping session, even though Saoirse Ronan was goddamn great in that. And it was the 2006 Korean monster movie. One of my favorite movies I will also retro review at some point. There was goofy narration because you had to talk about the formation of the planet and all this explosions and everything, and how it came back from the how it developed into the prehistoric age. And then there was fire, and they danced into the fire, and then they ended up not being, like the planet cooled down, stuff like that, but life could not form. And then eventually there was water. The weather started getting rough. They actually had it looked like they filmed it in somebody's bathtub, like there were these waves going. It was just really, really fucking hilarious. But it was the 50s. I mean, what the fuck else? You can, even a great director like Jack Arnold, you got to work with what you have. And Universal Studios was really grasping at straws at this point. Because if I recall correctly, they did do This Island Earth around this time, and that was pretty goddamn expensive. In fact, that's something I got to retro review too. The MST3K movie, not the movie version, but This Island Earth, really fucking terrific. But we see stock footage of like water and this kind of stuff. People wandering on the beach. Well, the Gill man wandering on the beach, and then stock footage of the Amazon and everything, and a tributary to the Amazon, which actually that's how they open Revenge of the Creature, with a lot of reused footage. I mean, seriously, it's the same stuff where alligators were diving, or this bird just decided to just pull a goddamn suicide dive and just say waha, and you just would get a lot of that. So Dr. Carl Maya, I'm just gonna say Carl. No, but he finds that there's this this Gill man hand just standing up like this. He's like, "Aha, I have you. Help me, pulling me out." But his arm's stuck there. And what he decides to do is, smartly, he manages to get the hand out, and he says, "I'm going to go to the Institute," or whatever. "So you guys stay in charge." Always a good idea to have natives with fucking bowl cuts that are panicked and everything and don't understand some of this stuff, this technology and everything. Leave them in charge of the goddamn thing. When they know more about this shit, they know that they shouldn't be there. But anyway, what ends up happening is we cut to David and Kay. Well, we cut to Kay and Dr. Maya, and they're talking. They go on this like one little thing. It almost kind of reminded me of the fucking deck that they had for their little floaty thing, the little I guess the oceanic deck, except it was in a lake. Creep Show 2. Remember Creep Show 2 where they had that little pier thing? Kind of reminded me of that, except no weird slime creature and no girl showing her tits, more in the pity. So it turns out there's David, Dr. David Reed, Richard Carlson. Him and Kay are together. He was lucky to be able to be that close to her because, my God, again, Julie Adams, fucking Christ, she was gorgeous here. And they go with Dr. Maya to the Amazon eventually. But they trusted Kay to pilot the boat and everything, and somehow they managed to make it. Because when you have a woman driving in the 50s, you're never going to get anywhere. I kid. They really kind of objectified a whole lot of women in the 50s, didn't they? Because they should have been barefoot and pregnant in the goddamn, kitchen, according to how the 50s used them. Remember the Hours? Check out the Hours if you want to see an example. So anyway, so there was this discussion about, what Dr. Maya found and this expedition. You have Dr. Mark, who, it's kind of the mad with power guy that was talking about the Institute and everything and the funding, because somehow his funding didn't go to his hair, obviously, because it was pretty messy. He decides, let's go to the Amazon. And as doctors are talking, various other Institute workers, it's a good chance that hand belonged to an amphibian, one that spent a great deal of time in the water, as opposed to the amphibians that are always on land. Some of the writing in this was actually pretty suspect. But then they're talking about making the expedition. What should we do? It's like, well, should we hire people? Why don't we make the expedition? Yeah, makeshift expeditions with a guy that is clearly crazy. They always work out, because nobody ever has a goddamn mutiny, space or otherwise, in any of these movies. So, the Gill Man, I did kind of like how the Gill Man had a crescendo, because he would reach his hand up. I can't do the music justice, but it's just so, I get goosebumps thinking about it, because it's just great. It's simple, but Joseph Gershenson, he understood subtlety with music, did that kind of stuff, and you would get that. You got that obviously in Revenge of the Creature. I know you got it in Creature Walks Among Us. Don't remember where else. I remember it in another movie, so blatant. But Universal International Pictures would just reuse that stuff because they owned it and they were trying to cut costs. You take a look at the later stuff they did. I'm trying to remember. I think it was 20 million miles of Earth. It came from beneath the sea. It might be it came from beneath the sea, but that was loaded with stock footage, ship stock footage. And then you had the Deadly Mantis, which was another Universal thing, and my God, that thing was like 25% stock footage. But the Gill Man crescendo, he ends up attacking the natives or whatever, clearly because of their haircuts. He's jealous he can't grow hair, and he's like, you could grow hair and you grow bulls like that, you bastards. Roar, roar. And he does that and everything. See, he does this. He reaches his hands out like that, and he says, I'm going to get you. Oh, I play too rough, don't I? And then the ship Rita Moreno, which would actually be kind of funny if Rita Moreno was piloting that. Check out Rita Moreno. Google it, kids. And we get stock footage. And Williams is kind of a dick. Dr. Mark Williams. Richard Denning. And he's just... We get the Screaming Skull Peacock sound effects. If you remember the screen. A lot of references to MST movies, but also just 50s and 60s, early 60s, like sci-fi horror and stuff like that. Because a lot of that reused shit. Just the bird noises is so funny. And they get to the the campsite and everything, and the natives are torn apart. They're tearing me apart, Gill Man. And Dr. Maya's all thrown off, and people are like, maybe a jaguar. Yeah, jaguars are known for leaving handprints all over people, and not tearing through the goddamn thing and being like, what a fucking jaguar would be. Usually sleeping at the zoo, and kids decide to pound on the glass, and then the jaguar scares them, and I say, well, that's what you get, you little shits. I love children. I don't. Children can piss off. But anyway, jaguars, are known, of course, for their subtlety and not tearing apart every goddamn thing and eating people. They could eat people. They would have at least eaten their face, because they can't feel their face because it got torn off, and also they're dead. So the Gill Man at one point, tries to get at Kay, because, again, one, he has not had a woman in centuries, seemingly, and two, again, Julie Adams, how could you not? But sure, when a Gill Man tries to kidnap a woman or whatever, it's Universal Pictures funds it. I do it, and I'm kicked out of the college. So moving on hastily on from something that I may or may not have incriminated myself in. The lagoon is a paradise, but they say no one has come back from it. And it's funny because it's literally just down the fucking river. It's just right over there. It's not even off in the middle distance. It's like you could basically walk there if you could walk on water. So Mark Williams gets I'm going to get a giant harpoon. This harpoon's huge. It's seriously, I don't know how one person can hold it. And then there's more screeching birds, because those are the shrieking birds, Your Highness. And man, scuba, dooba, doo, oh no, we're caught in the water. I can't do the, no sir, I do the water. Can't do the glub glub water. I can't do the glub glub effect because I'm not Whitney Houston taking a bath right before. Anyway, they're the longest lasting oxygen tanks ever. Like these, obviously it was filmed in, like certain safe areas and stuff like that, but there were some cool sets. I will say this much, but some of the stuff that they do a little bit later, like you got David and Mark or whatever. It's like, man, not Chapman. No, he was nowhere to be found. They are doing their underwater exploration. They got a camera and stuff like that. And someone ought to tell him, about that his ambition is showing. Oh, that's not ambition, David. Stop looking at. You're supposed to be looking at Kay. How could you not look at Julie Adams? I would, and you would too. And what was it like down there? She asked. It's like another world. Not like Two Worlds. Not like Two Worlds 2. Why did they call the video game that? I'd like to see it. Oh, well, I could show you another world. David, that's sexual harassment. So anyway. I do like the swimming scene at one point because, of course, the first thing you do with the Amazon with all the wildlife and everything and all that, and not being familiar with it, even if you studied it, is immediately dive in there and swim away from the ship that's safe, and you swim around and everything, not knowing what you could get, not knowing what kind of creatures are down there, not knowing if the water's toxic or whatever, all the prehistoric life. Yeah, swim in it, and just do this because I understand perfectly how to swim. I can't backstroke. One, I'm not in water. Two, can't really swim all that good. But she's doing her swimming. And the Gill man, who obviously wants to get Kay, every kiss begins with Kay. So he's trying to take her, but they're doing this underwater ballet thing. This beautiful dance. It's not even intended to be that way, but it's beautifully done. Music fits. Really, really good stuff. One, you get to see Julie Adams do that. And you get to see the Gill man, in his suit. And fun fact, they used two different Gilman suits and also two different actors. One guy for land, one guy for water. The guy that did the underwater scenes was born in 1930, is still alive. And I imagine probably got some good stunt work. And boy, you can really tell they hastily pushed out the sequels because the production values of the suits got a little bit weirder and a little bit cheaper because they were pumping these things out like crazy. I'm amazed they didn't actually do Abbott and Costello meet the Gill man. I'm actually very surprised they didn't do that. Considering that Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein, the Mummy, maybe they were no longer a comedy duo by then. But always swimming around the Amazon, the unfamiliar Amazon, is always a good idea. And then Mark, he wants to hunt it and basically trap it and kill it. Well, he wants to kill it and then show the finds. David is like, hey, I'm not for this. Let's discover it. Let's take samples. Let's come back and get, with a proper expedition. And the first and only 3D underwater camera. Seriously, that thing was the size of a goddamn Buick. They even had Buicks at that point? I think they did. Just so huge. And then, well, he was harpooned into hiding because there were caves that literally were just 5 feet away. So easy for him to swim to. And the Kamongo, not the Cucamongo. Then Kamongo, take it fast or take it slow. Yeah, if you can't tell, I love this movie, but I also love to make jokes. So, they're a terrible research crew because they can't see that the fact that the Gill man's right over there. And one of the crew guys that didn't have as stupid of a haircut, but still the Gill man, jealous of hair, decides to take him into the water. And they killed Chico. Oh my God, Chico Santana, they killed him. Jesse Ventura is going to be upset. Will you be serious? And my brother was dragged down by a demon or whatever. David Benoit said the same thing. So, it's a manfish, as Nestor Paiva's character said. And Mark, has gone mad with power, the cliche that it is. And David mentions, well, life in outer space. Foreshadowing for this, in case you missed. Again, fucking great. I think it's on Peacock. I watched Creature from the Black Lagoon on Peacock, by the way, but this is also there. So, basically, the Gill man just decides he basically tries to run away from everybody, but he wants to take a camera because, I need that camera for my underwater cave tour job. But he's a terrible tour guide because he decides to kidnap the people instead of letting them gradually come there by himself or herself, and he's drugged. And They basically they drug him with a whole bunch of stuff and just put it as like powderized stuff. It's like, when you've got Gillman, you've got to have drugs. In the 50s, boy, were people on copious amounts of drugs. So they do the underwater cave exploring. You don't really need oxygen, apparently, because you can literally dive and be, oh, I'm in a cave suddenly. Well, where'd this cave system come from? I don't know. We're not familiar with the Amazon. Also, why would there be caves like that in the Amazon? Not that I know much about it. It's like they suddenly went to Atlantis, the lost city of Atlanta. And there was this guy named Z. It just suddenly killed. Just suddenly fucking killed. Just Z. He's Z-gone from the movie. And they somehow captured the Gill man. Easily. Pretty easily. Because he was all drugged. And they trapped him in a basin area where they're like, okay, he's not going to affect the boat. He's in water. But this will hold him. Bamboo shoots that we somehow got, and also, or just branches of some variety, and ropes tying him down. This will hold a, prehistoric creature that has somehow survived all these, terrible creatures and all these hardships and everything, and has somehow survived harpoons and drugs. This will hold a guy that's got the strength to rip people's faces off because they have stupid bowl cuts. Guess what it didn't do? Narrator, it did not hold him for long. There was a mutiny among David and Mark, and it was a good trap, easily breakable. This ship was thankfully unsinkable because they probably couldn't afford another one. And the Gill man hates lanterns, or he wanted to take a lantern with him to do more underwater cave exploring. And maybe, I don't know, maybe he wanted to shine a light on the limestone and everything. Maybe he wanted to make it look pretty for when he captures Kay. And the Gill man basically said, fuck it, I'm going to build a dam, because he doesn't give a damn, but he built a dam, deciding to trap them there. So, well, they put a winch there, but they can't drag it up because the Gill man's like, no, I will not allow you to do it. If the Gill man talked like that, it would be hilarious. Mr. Mark David Gilman, he just decides that he is going to assassinate the entire goddamn crew. And they end up basically finding it. He captures Kay. They get in the caves, the K caves, if you will. Triple K's car insurance. So Mark decides to go for a dive. Mark ends up being off because whatever. And let's all figure out, what the hell we're going to do. Let's all be stupid and figure out, let's shoot at him. Let's shoot at him and see what happens. They shoot at him enough, and the Gill man basically just ends up plateauing or planking, I believe, as the kids say, and he just, falls into the goddamn water and dies. And so I guess I get Kay and David are fine, and the captain's fine, and it was what it was. That's pretty much it. If we're going to be perfectly honest, I mean, Mark really wasn't that big of a loss because he was kind of a goddamn dick. And then, well, that was it. The Gill man died, except he didn't, because he came back for the sequel. Or it's another one. Maybe it's multiple Gill men. Maybe it's like Vince Gillman. Vince the Gill man. If you get that reference, I love you guys. Seriously, though, one of my favorite movies, once again, plug. Okay, Creature from the Black Lagoon. Fucking great. Yes, it's a DVD collection. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to spring for the Blu-rays yet, because I can't find them for a good price. I'll probably check Amazon. But one of my favorite movies, Jack Arnold, tremendous director, even though I was knocking it and making fun of it. Great fucking monster movie. Love diving into it. Let me know your thoughts on this movie in the comments, please. Like, share, subscribe. Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.